Hello all, this is a quick tutorial on how to do lighting inside Blender with the cut-in shadows for Perfect Dark and Goldeneye. So I will note very quickly that this is not a lighting tutorial. I'm not going to teach anybody how to do that. But as a quick 101 with the lighting system that I do have, I like to use ambient occlusion, which I've probably lost right now. I think it's under here. Yeah, there we go. So ambient occlusion and environment lighting, and the sky color is set up with a blend sky. Now essentially this color will show up on your walls, that one's going to show up on your floors. The ambient occlusion is used to add depth in areas. The two lights that I use, one is set to provide shadows, which is not this one, and the other is set to provide fill lighting. Now at present I've been working on Core Fix's map and doing the lighting for that. It's also why it's wonky. I've been changing a lot of the vertices, and UV layout will change as a result of this. But we're going to talk about how to get the lighting done quickly and how to cut in the nice shadows as is seen here. This is a twofold system inside Blender that uses rendering it to a texture and then applying that texture to the vertex colors. So the core rendering feature we're going to go through is the bake feature here, found under the whatever this window, the camera window thing, I don't know what it's called. The main difference we have is I always turn textures off. Now at the top here is a render of what things look like from my camera here. That was the wrong button. That was also the wrong button. There we go, we'll use that button. Now if we turn textures on and do another quick render, you'll see how it would look with the textures. I'm sure everybody's lost right now, but we'll turn textures off in preparation for our bake, and let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do is section off a small part of the map here that I'm going to go through and do the lighting on. Now, Blender has the ability to use multiple UV maps within one object. This is a UV map that I had previously assigned to my lighting channels, and for this exercise we're just going to recreate that, except in a smaller sequence. So let's get ourselves a fresh one, make sure we're not using one of the other ones, and let's get a new material up here to begin with. So we'll call that lighting 2, I don't know. Name. Turn off alpha, otherwise it gets annoying. There's no other reason behind that, I'm just prejudiced. Now, UV mapping is essential here. We want to unwrap things so that the walls have corners and sharp edges. The rest of the surfaces are kept together. And we'll play with this a wee bit until we get something that looks about right. So this is all very well and fine, but when things extrude past their areas, everything gets just a little bit too tight. So we'll loosen that up with our island margin settings there. Okay, that's pretty good. And we're working with our new UV map that we've added down here. So after all of that mucking around, we just hit bake. And that is the lighting that was generated on this UV map inside the engine. It will be accurate to our render. Is it good to go? Well, simple answer is I don't think so. I like to jazz it up a little bit. So we'll save it as an image, lighting new, and let's bring it inside to, I personally use GIMP because I'm cheap and I don't like paying for any licenses. And previously I had one set up here which included two things. The first was a color layer to add some character, and the second is a grunge map. And we'll just apply those over and have a wee tweak with the numbers to give you an idea of what they do. So the color layer is simply used to add some variance to all of the vertices and all of the points, just as rear does. That's obviously too much. I find for best results, I either set it to color or multiply and a really, really low number. So we'll just copy off the other ones I'm doing. I've got it at 12, and that one is multiply is at 21. Now this is a personal preference. There's no reason you have to use these settings. At the end of the day, this stuff is art, so do as you would with art. And again, going back with this, the layers that I'm putting on over here are really a personal thing. It's a preference for me. I just like to do this sort of stuff because I feel it adds depth and character to the work that I'm making. So I'm going to save this out as as an image. I'm just going to overwrite the old one. There's nothing sacred about this unless you're working on a really big project. It will take a while, and sorry about the chatter in the background. There's still a few people in the office here. Now that that's done, let's reload our image and make sure everything shows up. There we go. We're doing great. So far, so good. Now, I use a few wee plugins inside Blender in order to... We're missing a wall here. I don't know if that's intentional. Never mind. I use a couple of plugins inside Blender to do a few extra things. In this case, under the sorry, that was terrible. I shouldn't have used a quick key. Under the Vertex Paint menu that you can get to by pressing V, I have an extra wee additional thing, which is the UV texture to V coals. And vertex colors are found down here. So let's kill our prior lot, and we'll now apply the new vertex colors we've made, and everything's going to screw up. That's not appealing. It isn't cool. This isn't for a moment what we want to see. It's not for a moment interesting. But that's fine. We're going to work with that. So this is where cutting our shadows come in. With our original map selected, so if we go to this, it shows our texturing as was set up by Corfix, and this is our texturing as set up by our UV map. We've got some nice complicated shadows happening in this area here, and some nice shadows falling down in this area there. So if we have a quick look at the mesh, I might be inclined to section this off a wee bit further just for the sake of simplicity. That's selecting and pressing P. We're going to use this a lot. So back in our view, let's make everything into quads to make it easier to work with, and that was just Alt plus J. I'm going to cut some shadows in, and depending on how much we can see this area will dictate how detailed we want our shadows to be. Because every time we cut through a polygon, we increase our poly count. The other reason I convert everything into quads is so that things cut up better. And if we think about our cuts, no matter what we do here, we're going to end up with about the same amount. So we may as well just go for it in this case. I'm terrible, I'm horrible. So, if you press Shift plus K, you get the knife tool in edit mode. And I really do just cut in something that looks approximately like what the shadow does. Now we're about to hit a trick here, because if I cut straight across here, I'm going to slice through the other part of that mesh there. So we won't... I shouldn't have pressed enter. Not that it really matters, we can just finish this off by hand. I'm going to keep my day job. Right, just again the knife tool, Control K, and we'll slice with the shadow roughly. I'm going to use this polygon edge here to finish our shadow off. We're not complete, and that's clearly obvious, and once again we're going to exploit a few things in the system by going into Select with the Circle tool, in this case C, and mopping up all the areas that are light, which will be that. Toggle into transparent mode, make sure we've got everything, and now let's hit P to break the mesh off so we can work with a nice clean version of the mesh area itself. Now I like deep, dark colours, good defined shadows. That's just me. Again, we're being artistic. So instead of jumping ahead and not being sensible, which I was about to do and just start painting things, the strength on my brush is usually about half, and I just go a tap at a time, for lack of a better word, and fill the shadows out. That really is all it is. Now I like how dark this edge is here, so we're going to use that. The art, again, at the end of the day, this is all just art. And that's really what it's about. Now if I paint like that, I'm going to merge everything together here. So once again, we'll go back into edit mode, and let's separate this out. And that way we can paint an edge and keep the darkness of it, or work the colors through, and we don't need to worry about things getting merged too far together. Now, again, terrible storyteller I am. I haven't told you what buttons I'm pressing, so S just samples the color underneath the cursor. That's the only magic trick that I'm doing here. So I press S beside that to get a nice clean gradient across there, something approximate at the end of the day, as there's nothing here that says it has to be exact. Paint over that window as Blender did not render it properly. This is a common thing, it happens a lot. And we'll just smooth that up a little bit. That's pretty good. But I would like this edge to be a wee bit darker. We're going to come back and have a look at that. So hitting V, let's have a look at the light edge. This is the lightest point, and that's bleeding from our shadowed area after we cut it. So we'll select some lighter areas and just paint them on. I'm going to separate the floor again, because we want to keep it sharp. There's no higher reason. That's nice and light. Let's keep this dark point against the wall to add a bit of character. Maybe we won't. That really didn't work due to the way that this is triangulated. So if we triangulate that, again going out, pressing Control T, then we're getting a relatively good result there. So let's drop everything back into our correctly textured mode and see how we're doing. Pretty good all up. Again, swapping texture modes, that's our new map. And we can also see there's not much bleed in there between our different objects. And this is our textured mode, final view as it would roughly look within the game. Compare it with the shadows that I've got around the level, and I'm afraid yours truly has been a wee bit heavy-handed with different shadows in them. And also just turned around and completely lost and forgot about the buttons I was meant to be doing this all with. I'm toggling between solid, rendered mode, textured mode, all that sort of stuff at the same time. I'm just going to darken our edge up here. A funny twist of art is that shadows seem to look better, lighter, in the dark edge and darker on the outside of the edge. I'm sure somebody can give me some art theory on why that is. I don't know, I'm not that smart. I'm just a guy who does something. So really that quickly, by and large, we've just done a super fast shade on this area. We've cut in shadows using the knife tool, and we've also added character by putting an overlayer as a color and a burn layer into the image to get a bit of variance in the level itself. And I'm running around here by pressing Control plus F. Should there be pot plants in this hedgerow? Here's a good point. So here is where things did not blend in all that well. And that is because Blender would have separated the faces when we did that unwrap function, because they're not actually joined at the corners or in any way. While this is great for reducing the poly count, it doesn't really work out in our favor. So let's smooth this over a touch, just, because we can. Oh, and I like how that dark edge, it's nice and rich. And it will add some more depth to the inside of our hedgerow. I assume it's a hedgerow, by just picking that up a wee bit. And by holding Alt and Z, we can go to text mode and see how everything looks now. I'm quite happy with that. I really don't know if we're going to be able to see this room. If we can't, then I've just increased the poly count for absolutely no reason. If we can, it'll be a nice wee addition. Anyway, I know this tutorial's probably been really terrible. I've glazed over a heap. I haven't told anybody what plugins I'm using. I haven't had anything on the screen to give me any key commands, any key codes, anything like that. Somebody smarter than me is going to have to make a better tutorial for this, but I do hope that this helps for the better part.